Today, side proposition recognizes a problem. Side proposition is the one that's proud to solve it. Just to offer some definition, contraception refers to any device or procedure that aims to achieve two objectives. Firstly, to prevent insemination, and secondly, to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections. In the context of today's debate, both unwanted pregnancies and unwanted spread of STIs are serious societal problems. In Indonesia and Malaysia, baby chutes have to be created along the side of the streets so that parents can dump away their unwanted children with the morning trash. In other countries, sexually transmitted infections continue to be a massive problem to society, where entire societies are undermined because of a decrease in workforce capacities and individuals suffering for the rest of their life from sexually transmitted infections they never intended to get. But moreover, premarital sex is already a prevailing phenomenon. While abstinence and religious beliefs are respectable perceptions, the fact is that to date, they have been unable to mitigate completely the risks to public health. While individuals should still have the right to choose with regards to taking up religious options to not use contraception, it is within the government's duty to provide viable alternatives. Therefore, today we stand for a policy with 4 clauses. The first clause is that the government will provide condoms as the most common, most effective, most affordable, and least invasive means of contraception for free. The second clause is that we'll build upon models like the one found in the Netherlands, where we provide free contraception in the form of condoms to high schools and universities, but also public health facilities such as pharmacies and hospitals. The third clause is that these will be optional for individuals to use. There will be no government intervention to mandate the use of contraception, because we respect there is still the right to choose. And the fourth and final clause is that we support sex education to supplement this policy, which will be tailored to local nuances. This means that in societies that are extremely conservative, obviously there will not be a heavy emphasis put on contraception or on free sex. However, the purpose of these sex ed lessons will be to prevent a whole array of options and allowing students to choose for themselves which option they choose is best. The clarification for this debate is that they should comply with legal laws on age of consent, because this is not an infringement on the right to choice, but medically it is necessary to avoid medical complications that come with sexual activities at a very young age. Therefore, the yardstick for today's debate is which side best manages the problems of STIs and unwanted pregnancies while still promoting responsible sexual behavior should win this debate. And we'll be proving this through 3 lines of substantive argument. I will be showing you why principally it is the government's duty to protect and should therefore provide free contraception. I will further prove to you a practical point on how we protect individuals from unwanted risks, while my second speaker, Agrim, will then further prove to you how we practically encourage responsible social behavior. I'm going to be transiting on to my first point of substantive on the government's duty to protect. And the thesis is that governments have the responsibility to protect society from harms through providing options. And the premise is that there is inherent harms to free, unprotected sex. Now let's look at the world that we live in today. The reality is that unprotected sex is rife. Influences such as religion and moral beliefs do play a part in mitigating these. However, counter-influences such as Hollywood or hormonal urges means many individuals perform unprotected sex. In 2007, in the United States alone, they hit a peak of 827,609 abortions within a single year. This clearly illustrates how unprotected sex has led to many individuals with unwanted pregnancies, and this is a problem in today's world. These inherent harms means that governments should take active measures to mitigate these harms. Governments already acknowledge this responsibility when they sponsor state militaries, for instance, to prevent the harm of external intervention. In Switzerland and many states of the USA, even Singapore, where we come from, mammograms for mid-aged women are free because they acknowledge the benefits of detecting breast cancer early and the harms of breast cancer to women later in their lives. Governments already respect and acknowledge the responsibility to protect public health. But before I move on, yes, madam.
I'd like to ask a question. How do you feel about, or how do you compare this sort of protection with, for example, the state giving medicine for free or giving sustained operations for people?
We think that this debate is about how the government should protect the people. If you're able to prove to us that medicine fundamentally is necessary to the vast majority of society, a specific type, we think that we can make room for providing healthcare at a subsidized rate. However, due to the specificities of contraception and something that's high amounts of stigmatization, we think that the government's approach of giving it for free best addresses the problem. But back to my point of substantive on the government's responsibilities. The government's responsibilities is particularly important in this case because of the vulnerability of beneficiaries. And this kind of answers a PY as well. Individuals agree to engage in sex, but they don't always agree to the risk of sexually transmitted infections or pregnancies. Particularly for sexually transmitted infections, often individuals are unaware that their partners are even carriers or even infected. Therefore, principally, because unprotected sex has harms, the government has therefore the responsibility to protect it. What happens in their case? No, thank you, ma'am. In their case, contraception are heavily stigmatized and inaccessible. Youths fear reprisal from being seen as loose or immoral if they publicly purchase condoms. When governments advocate and provide easily accessible contraception, makes it acceptable and makes it affordable and accessible, therefore mitigating risks. I'm going to be transiting on to my second point of substantive on protecting the individual from harms. And the thesis is that easily accessible contraception protects individuals from sexually transmitted infections and unwanted pregnancies. And there will be the two tiers in which I'll deal with this substantive. Firstly, on sexually transmitted infections. STIs are inherently harmful to individuals in society because of the mode of transmission. Sometimes even carriers are unaware that they're infected with STIs because of the nature of these diseases, like chlamydia or AIDS, which often are noticeable to the very later stage when they're close to death. During this period of time, many individuals are infected due to their sex acts. And these have a major effect on individuals when they face the prospect of early death, lifelong suffering, and heavy stigmatization from society. Contraception is crucial to this process when they're easily accessible because they protect individuals from this harm, preventing the transmission of these diseases. Yes?
Sir, don't you think that individuals should be responsible for themselves?
Thank you, sir. We think yes, individuals should be responsible to themselves by and large. In the case of sexually transmitted infections, it's a specific case because often the act of committing sex isn't always a completely rational one. Often there are influences such as hormones. We cannot expect individuals to completely protect themselves and consider all the risks before such acts. But on to unwanted pregnancies very quickly. Unwanted pregnancies cripples the lives of mothers when they are forced to make the unfair decision of giving up life prospects to take care of their child or giving up the very child who they've just given birth to. This is a choice that no individual should ever be expected to make because it's fundamentally unfair. Moreover, there are clear societal ramifications when orphan children often contribute to the costs incurred on orphanages, and children growing up without proper guidance, unfortunately, often face the potentiality for crimes. Second, contraception fundamentally prevents insemination, therefore preventing harms of unwanted pregnancies, harms of sexually transmitted infections. We've shown you why principally governments have the responsibility, why practically this helps the individuals in society. We're proud to propose.
Now my pleasure to invite Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the upcoming 8 minutes, I'll start advocating why contraceptives should not be provided for free. Let me start out with a brief case division. At first, I'm going to refute the two main arguments of the proposition team, and then I will propose the other three arguments. Well, first two of them. The first one, authority, or why state should be neutral in terms of controversial topics. The second one, which is responsibility and cost. Why state acts responsible by providing contraception for free, and why is this too expensive? And then our third speaker is going to present you an argument which talks about value and how people do not value things if they do not pay for them. So let me proceed to a refutation. The first speaker of affirmative team told us that it's government's duty to take care of problems, to take care of citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, we must understand one crucial thing. State cannot care for everything. State cannot, no, thank you, sir. State cannot care for everything. State can be always put to the role of the big caretaker and of the big guy who saves lives. because at first this is not possible, and at first it's like a humiliation of the state and a humiliation of the individuals. Because the individuals have their own free will.
Point of information, sir.
Yes, sir.
So states then have the responsibility to provide subsidized education because it doesn't save lives.
Thank you. Yes, state has the responsibility to provide things for people, but just to a certain extent. State cannot provide for everything. At first, it's not physically possible that state would care about everything. And at second, where would we be? Would you like to live in a world where state takes care of everything, where state dictates you what to do or what you can't do, and state makes the decisions for you? I don't think you'd like to do that. And therefore, it acts as a humiliation of the state. State cannot be put into the role where he acts as the big caretaker, as a big savior, the big hero who always saves lives and who always makes up for problems. Now, the second point, the affirmative team, my apologies. The affirmative team proposed was the protection of individuals, and that we should give contraceptives for free because individuals may be harmed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge problem. This claim supports incompetency and overcare. No, thank you, sir. And does not do what a state should do to encourage its citizens to be self-sufficient, to be intelligent. This plan leads to the typical state.
So,
yes, sir.
If we provide one extra option, do you not think that helps people make a more rational, informed decision, thus making them more responsible, contrary to what you're saying?
Thank you, sir. So, at first, not quite. Let me start up. There are some problems with this that the state should support. Contraceptives, I'm going to talk about that in a second in my two arguments. And then I think that if state makes this decision, okay, we want to give you condoms for free, you may or may not accept it, the state still kind of suggests you what to do. The state does not fully respect your free will. And what's a result? You feel like, the state's approved this. So that means it's automatically good. I don't necessarily have to think about it anymore. And no, thank you. And this just supports the incompetency overcare, which is not necessary and which may harm individuals. Let me now move on to our two arguments. So at first, the authority and people relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some crucial controversial issues, and the state should be neutral in means of these issues. Or otherwise, some people may feel discriminated. Religion is a big issue in this topic. Christianity, even Islam, does not fancy sex before marriage. No thanks. And does not support condoms at all, or contraception. And therefore, the state, which makes this decision that it kind of says, no, thank you. And it says that it will give out condoms for free or contraception, acts disrespectfully to these groups of people. They may feel ostracized from their own state because the state supports what they do not agree with. The state supports what their religion is against. So thank you. If state approves condoms, approves contraception, it gives the people the sense of that it's perfectly safe and it's perfectly okay. Many people do not have sex because they may be scared that it's not safe and that it may not be sufficient. But if state, the big one you always want to rely on, says, okay, I'm going to give it to you for free, what are you going to think? That it's unsafe? Most of people will think that, oh yes, this is actually good, and this acts as a contradiction to religion and many other beliefs, and therefore we think that in terms of controversial issues like this one, the state should not make a clear stand. The state should be neutral in order to provide a nice room and comfortable room for all its citizens, so that they do not feel ostracized or else discriminated. Our second argument says that firstly, it's irresponsible from the side of the state to support condoms because there are other crucial things the state should perhaps support it as not. Let me give you an example. There is a cancer patient dying of cancer. Should the state give this amount of money to the cancer patient or to somebody who just wants to have sex? We think that in this case, the state does not act as it should. Many countries lack roads, lack infrastructure. There is hunger and there is poverty. The state has to solve these things first in order for condoms and these things to be effective. Then the costs. The affirmative team may think the costs are not so high, but our team made a quick calculation. And let's imagine that, for example, in Greece, an average people has sex for 160 times per year. But that's Greece. If we count on less numbers, and we count on the fact that there are 10 million sexually active people living in the country, the cost of condoms may be as high as 500 million euros per year. And that is too high, and I doubt that some countries can afford this model. And there's the thing of dependency. If the state starts giving out condoms, it's going to make its own citizens dependent on them. It's going to tell them that, okay, this is all right, and the state could then never quit, because what would happen? The citizens would get addicted to this model. So let me summarize what I've been talking about for the past 7 minutes. We do not believe that contraceptives should be provided for free because of the two arguments we presented: authority and responsibility. Cost plus the refutation I provided. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I move on to my constructive case, I will deal with their case on 2 questions. Firstly, does the government really have the duty to care? Secondly, is our side's policy infringing on free choice of the individual? Let's look at the first question on whether there is the government duty to care. Now, they've come up and told us that the government really does not have a mandate on dealing with issues like sexual intercourse and dealing with problems that arise from this. And they've gone on to tell us that if that is the case, we might as well have medication and operations as well. Firstly, we tell you that yes, there is a government duty to care. Why? Because the government is the caretaker of the individual and the society as a whole. And while the government might not necessarily intervene in all matters specifically, the government has the right to mitigate any harm that might be caused to any other member in the society or the third party in this case. We see this is why the government legislates on ideas like suicide. Government does not let you cause harm to yourself or to anyone else in society, be it through murder. So this is why we see that these are parallel policies that the government already advocates, and safe sex and provision of contraception in this is just another means of preventing any sexual diseases or any problems that might be caused through this rampant activity in this case. They've come up and also told us that no, the government is forcing itself on these individuals. But in the same speech, the first speaker made a concession that this is just a suggestion. We think that if it's a suggestion, it's fine with us, because the more options we present to our society, the better it is, because people can make a more rational choice. Then they told us that it might be an expensive process to carry out. Firstly, we tell you, condoms are pretty cheap. Condom is just rubber, and the production cost and giving out of condoms is not really that expensive a cost. And even if it was expensive, what comes first, the societal good or the money that you're spending on it? We realize that sexually transmitted diseases are an issue in today's society, and it's not about how do you cut down on sex, it's about how you mitigate this problem effectively. We believe that giving condoms out, giving contraception measures, maybe through surgically enhanced measures or maybe through simple products like condoms, is a good way to go. The last argument of this was that people will have more sex and people will be addicted to condom. If people are practicing sexual profligacy, we don't think that will be the case in our society, and even if that happens, people are practicing safer sex. It's better because there are no diseases being caused, no harm being caused. They told us that there will be addiction with the use of condoms. Tell you what's really wrong with that. People can use condoms, it's good for them. I'll take you in a moment. It's good for them to do so, it's good for the society as a whole. We don't think that's an issue in today's debate. Yes, ma'am.
The point that the first speaker was trying to make was that the state is in a position of authority, and what that state says and what it proclaims as right indirectly causes and signals to the people that that is what they should do.
Ma'am, if you listen to our policy right from the start, we told you it's a suggestion. The policy options that you have in front of you help you make a rational decision. Giving you an additional option does not mean that the government is subtly hinting at making that the only option. There are still other options. You might wish to use them or not. That's totally up to you. We are fine with that on our side. Moving to my second question, whether whether we infringe on free choice. We told you that no, we will not take away the free choice because the option still exists. You can still choose to not use these contraceptives. But as a government, it's still the government's duty to decide and to allow people to make a rational choice and to give them the option of having contraception in the first place. Secondly, we've already mentioned this, I'll repeat it again, we've enhanced the rational decision making due to more options. But the third argument that they gave under this was on religion, that we go and push down religion, we go intervene on religious ideas. And we tell you that the state and religion are fundamentally different. Whatever happens in religion, it's fine, certain religion customs are there and we support those customs. But as the state needs to open up to all options, especially because the first proposition mentioned the idea of neutrality. If there is neutrality, there needs to be the spectrum of all options laid out and not just a few options that are skewed towards particular ideas. Which is why we will put condoms, we will put other contraceptive means out on the table for the person to choose for himself or herself whether this is the right way to go. Having dealt with their case on these levels, I'll move to my constructive argument for today, which is on how our policy encourages responsible sexual behavior. The thesis of my argument is that provision of free contraceptives promotes a mindset for society to engage responsibly in sexual intercourse by making safe sex an attractive option. Now, as established in context, sex, especially premarital sex, is common in society. Sex is seen as a quick activity which is spurred in the heat of the moment. The emphasis is on the activity itself as opposed to the possible consequences that this activity might have. Now, this results in individuals engaging in unprotected sexual activities. On a societal level, the idea of sex is made convenient and thus protection is neglected. Now then, what happens when free contraceptives are provided under our policy? Now, sex is seen as an activity to be practiced safely because the government tells you that, hey, you have condoms and they should be used for these purposes, and thus the option is out there. Now, this is thus promoted to the government's action of free contraception. Now, let's look at how this influences society on two levels, the developed society and the developing society. For the developed society, we dispel the myth about sex that pervade in this society through the media, namely the Hollywood culture. We see in movies these days that most movies, if not all, have at least one sexual intercourse scene that is played out for the audiences. And this has made sex an activity that has gone and become entrenched in society. People have seen this activity as being quite important. But we see that at the same time there is a need to dispel the claim that using contraceptives is uncool in some way or the other. Which is why when the government puts out the option of using contraceptives out on the table, the people can decide for themselves and sex is no longer seen as a cool idea in society. The second idea that we see in developed societies is how men feel emasculated to the use of contraception as well. And we see that when the government advocates it for a societal level, it's not seen as something that needs to be done hidden away from society. It is something that's out there for everyone to practice, if not the individual himself. So we see in a developed society, this pervades quite deeply and is something that helps them. But in developing societies, this is even more important. We see that the use of contraceptives is inherently not part of their culture, and this is something our policy stands to change. We bring about education, we bring about sexual education to change societal mindsets, to make them learn about things that might go on during sexual intercourse. We also bring an additional perspective to activities that are usually carried out by missionaries, be it condom burning activities, which have hence created bad images of the use of contraception. With the availability of free contraception, the free nature pushes people to try it out because, hey, they're not paying for anything. Once they use it and get into a repeated use of the cycle, it becomes a habit. And this, along with education and societal mindset change, changes the idea of contraception, A, by preventing the diseases that might be caused, B, debunking the attitudes towards sex. We've seen this for people who use multiple sexual partners. We've seen this in America where 28 people in the age of 20 to 24 have had 15 or more partners for at least 14.2% of society. And only 54% of them are using contraception. The government's first move helps in encouraging safer sexual practices through the change of this mindset. We see that attitudes are changed by touting sex as an attractive option and making the use of contraception available to society. Therefore, we see that provision of free contraceptives promotes a mindset for society to engage responsibly in sexual intercourse, making safe sex an attractive option. We are proud to propose.
Invite Hana to the second.
Ladies and gentlemen, Team Slovakians today stands for the state as an authority and a state as one that represents its people as a whole and that does not take a stand on a controversial issue that could discriminate against certain parts of the citizens of that country. In my speech, I'll first talk about the neutrality of the state and how the state should not suggest and should not signal to society that one thing or another is the better option from two controversial issues that could result in such consequences. Then I'll talk about the authority of the state and how, in fact, it does infringe upon the free will of the people in a certain way. Then I'll talk about the dependency of the people on the state, and in the end, I'll bring my new argument about how people do not value what is given to them for free. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition aims to depict side opposition as a team that wants to ban contraceptives and not allow people to buy them. They're saying that they stand for a country, for a state that gives citizens, no thank you sir, that gives citizens the right to choose. Ladies and gentlemen, they have that right to choose now. They have the right to go to the shop and buy a condom. We do not want to take that right from them. But the moment the state starts giving it for free, it as an authority, no thank you sir, as an authority, as the person, as the body in charge, the one who is in the role of the lawmaker, of the one who tells its citizens what is right and what is wrong, the one who determines what morality means in that state. It, as that state, is, no thank you, indirectly telling its citizens, we are giving you for free, we are encouraging you to take it because we want you to pay nothing for it, to have to pay nothing and to only get it. Please pay it. This is combined, no thank you, with a slight contradiction in the side proposition's case. First of all, they said that this problem that exists is that people have kids and that they get diseases transmitted. But ladies and gentlemen, the solution to that problem already exists, and that is the existence of contraceptives itself. What their problem is either two things. First of all, that people are not buying these condoms and these contraceptives. And in that case, no thank you, and in that case, they're contradicting themselves if they say that they are not encouraging people to buy them, because that is the very solution they are telling us. Their solution is encourage people to buy this because they are not buying it. Therefore, the state is infringing in a way on the free choice because it is encouraging. And if that is not their problem, then the problem, no thank you sir, is money. And if they think that the problem is money, then they are contradicting themselves on the fact that the state does have sufficient resources of paying for this. Because if it seriously is only some small piece of rubber hardware that costs 10 cents, then the people can buy it on their own. So now that we've dealt with this small problem, let's now move on to the dependency of the state. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should be in a role of simply the one who protects its people on a small scale. It takes care of the police and of the judicial court and so on. But before I move on, yes, sir.
Certain religions like Buddhism and Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in violence. Should these states therefore cease military operations?
Of course not, sir, because if a religion does not believe in violence, that is completely normal, just like everyone else does not believe in violence. The fact that a country has military operations is in order to deal with violence and to take care of violence in other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we all believe that military operations are needed because otherwise there would be more violence than there is now. That is quite logical. The fact is, with these different religions and different ideologies, that once a government takes the stand of one over the other, if half of the country is Catholic, for example, Slovakia, which is actually the majority, and if the other part of the country is atheist, the government should be completely neutral, not encouraging people to take up condoms and therefore go against that side that is religious. And ladies and gentlemen, the majority of the world is religious, just like Christianity, just like Islam, just like, for example, Buddhism that goes against the very idea of pleasure oftentimes. These things are something that are not supported by religion and should not be supported by the state either. So back to the point of dependency that I was on before the point of information came. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should not encourage people to be dependent on it. And if the law, if this new case and if this new law that the proposition has come up with is being implemented because people are irresponsible, which is what they've said in their very first speech, we think that the solution to that irresponsibility should be found in not making the people more irresponsible by giving them solutions to that and by making them dependent. Because, ladies and gentlemen, once we start giving out these contraceptives, there will be no stop to it. We'll have to keep giving them on forever because the people will continue to need them and we won't be able to stop giving them for free. Ladies and gentlemen, what we believe must go on is some form of education on responsibility, education on leading a responsible life, and on not, for example, not using condoms if it is not with their religion, but then, of course, on not having premarital or marital, for that matter, if there's many children involved, of course, sex. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we believe must, thank you, sir, what we believe must come in hand is education, and this is something that has a lot to do with our third argument, so that is what I'm moving on to right now. Ladies and gentlemen, people do not value things that are given out for free. We have seen this in many cases. For example, in the case of certain countries in Africa, when people thought that they would help these people against mosquitoes that were carrying around and spreading certain diseases, they gave out nets for mosquitoes. But what these people did when they were given these nets was that they saw no work, no amount of money, no value to this thing, and therefore they misused it. They used it for something else. They sold it on the black market. Ladies and gentlemen, people will misuse and won't value these things because they won't see any value behind them. It is not only a piece of mosquito nets, and not only a problem of the education, because people were oftentimes told what to do with those nets. Ladies and gentlemen, it is also a problem, for example, in certain communist countries in the past that were very socialist and that were sort of like what Team Singapore wants to promote today, when medicine was for free. No, thank you. These people took this medicine and they took much more than they needed, not even using it, because they saw no extra value. They just took a lot of it because they thought that in case something happens in the future, in case it stops being free. And this again comes back to the problem of finances, comes back to the problem of irresponsibility and of a completely state-dependent population that needs the state to survive, that needs the state to take care of every problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should promote responsibility and should promote people who are responsible for their own lives, who can take care of themselves, who go to the store and buy a condom if it is needed, who don't go to the store, don't buy a condom, and don't have sex if they don't want to have a child, ladies and gentlemen. They're saying that there's a problem, people don't know about consequences, people are irresponsible. Let's take care of that problem and not try to bury the problem underground by some false solution of handing that won't ever be able to be stopped, ladies and gentlemen. So because it is an infringement on the free choice, the authority of the state does signal to the people what is right and what is wrong, we believe that Team Slovakia should win this debate.
It's my pleasure to call Joshua to present.
You start to wonder what kind of a debate you're in when there are lines being thrown around like the government cannot take a moral stance or make any decision in society. When you start to hear lines like how the government should be hijacked and held hostage by religious fundamentalist groups within their own societies, that's very worrying. And we're going to show you how on two levels. These same problems which are rampant in their case cause them to miss the issue in solving the problem of sexually transmitted infections and unwanted pregnancies and therefore lose the debate. So I'm going to talk to you about it on two levels. Firstly on the freedom of choice, and secondly on the idea of education and responsibility within society. So let me first talk about the freedom of choice. Now on a very abstract, high level, on a very abstract theoretical level, they said this hurts the free will of individuals. Now we've already told you why that's not true. Because we told you that providing an additional option doesn't mean that you're taking away the fundamental decision whether or not to use that option. And they considered this when they said that you're right, all you're doing is giving a suggestion. Now we told you that this suggestion is actually good because it enhances the ability to make a choice. Firstly, because it increases the number of options. Because individuals who wouldn't otherwise have bought a condom, whether due to stigma, whether due to cost, are now going to have it available. And secondly, it increases the rationality of the choice. Because often the decision to have sex in itself is an irrational one. It's a spur of the moment choice. It doesn't focus on the consequences. It focuses on the gratification. Which means that a government policy in overtly supporting consequential mechanisms to regulate the consequential outcomes of sex